In the last couple of podcasts, we have learned about budgeting, we've learned about forecasting, and in today's episode, we're going to be learning about accountability. So how do we take all of that data and all of that information in relation to budgets and forecasting, and then how do we communicate that to our team and to ourselves in a way that we remain accountable to it? In today's podcast, you're going to learn all about that. You're going to learn some amazing frameworks and some great tricks and tools on how you can essentially get your team buying into the greater vision of the organization. Things like organizational charts and goal setting and all that kind of stuff. It's super, super valuable. Guys, please, if you're listening to this, fantastic. I will encourage you though, in this instance, to head across to the Facebook page or the Facebook group or the YouTube channel and actually watch this one, because Danny actually, who's the guest on the show, actually runs through some resources so you can visually see how this thing looks and you can practically apply that to your business. Also, these resources are available for you guys. You can head across to thesiteshed.com. You can find the show notes for this episode or one of the episodes within this series, and you can get access to resources that Danny has shown you. So these guys, go and get hold of them. They're free and they're super, super valuable. And I can't wait to hear your feedback on this, guys. I really do think that you're going to get a lot out of it. And please share those experiences with us. We'd love to hear your successes and some of your experiences in relation to these podcasts. So I look forward to seeing you in the group, and enjoy the show. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones. I'm your host, and you're joining us today for the third and final episode in the series I'm conducting with my buddy Danny Kerr from Breakthrough Academy out of BC, Canada. Danny, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, my friend. Yeah, it's been good.
So Danny, this series we've titled Measuring What You Manage, the Only Way to Run a Profitable Trades Business at Scale, broken into three series, of which this is the final. However, in episode 1, we were talking about budgeting, which was an amazing insight as to how you can practically budget within your business. And the last episode, we talked about forecasting. And that last episode was short and sweet. And I encourage you guys out there that haven't heard, or more importantly, watched that episode, definitely head across to the Facebook page while you're there, like it, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. But watch that episode, because Danny actually did a bit of a share screen there with one of the resources that he's left behind for you to get for the grand total of 0. However, that resource is absolutely amazing, and it will really help you plug numbers in practically for your business and give you a complete forecasting breakdown, budget breakdown, everything. It's amazing. It's actually been available in the Site Shed for years, Danny. You left that, I think, the first time that you were on the show, and I know not a lot of people used it, and they were sort of blown away with how complex it was, me included, I should add. So anyway, in this episode, we're talking about accountability, and this will bring a close to this series. And of course, being accountable to, I suppose, your budget and your forecast and your numbers is really what it's all about, right? So super keen on diving into this episode. I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with, and maybe perhaps not because they're not accountable people, because they don't have the right frameworks in place. And so I'd love to hear what your take is on this. Again, I suppose ideally we're talking to the business owner here, but in reality we're talking to everybody that is alive, because some of these principles are certainly correlatable into the way that you live. They're certainly life skills. Okay, accountability. Let's jump in, Danny. So why is this so important?
Because none of us can do it ourselves, because we all need a babysitter. I don't know, because, it's funny. Well, let's talk about a few layers today, but let's talk about the owner and the accountability that's important for the owner to have. And let's talk about the team after that, and the accountability that the owner needs to bring to the team and why that's so important. But I mean, I'm an owner of a business. You're an owner of a business. And I love my business. I love getting busy and doing all kinds of things in it. But you know what? There's also stuff that I really hate doing and I don't do. And I avoid like the plague. You know what gets me to do it though? because I have 2 other business partners that hold me accountable every week, and they're waiting on me for it. And that accountability, I feel personally responsible to somebody, and I almost want to do it more for them than I do want to do for myself. And it's a weird thing, but it's a very human thing that I think having, owners that have a bit of almost like a quasi boss or somebody to work with them on their goals perform way better, because you have somebody looking over your shoulder, calling you out on your bullshit, and keeping you focused on the stuff that matters most. So not everyone knows, obviously, Igor. He's not been on as many podcasts, but I know you met him, and he's a game changer for me. I mean, his ability to hold me accountable, which allows me to hold our team accountable and so on, it's huge. And same with every owner out there. I think we all need, we'd hate to maybe we all got our own business, we get away from a boss, but we all need a little bit of a boss just to hold us accountable.
100%. I mean, I think that's why coaching is so important. Just having someone that you can be accountable to. I mean, realistically, that's what coaches should do, So even if it's not a coach, have an accountability partner. It could be a colleague or a friend or someone that you can sit down with once a month and you can go through, some of the things I'm sure we're going to discuss in this podcast. But I mean, that is really a game changer, to keep you on track. I agree. You don't do it if you if it's just you just don't do it.
Yeah, we've seen it with our guys, right? We've got our coaches working with our members, but even our members directly with each other. They're in groups of, depending on the group, they're in between 15 and there's a smaller group of 3, but these people know each other and they're waiting on each other's results and they're accountable to one another. And yeah, it's there's nothing like having another business owner who's doing exactly what you're doing that can be like, you're full of shit. I did that last year. It's tough, but you can do it. You're just, self-feeding yourself. That's the big thing. If the first thing of everything we'll talk about is just an owner having some level of accountability, because you're not accountable to anybody. If you're supposed you're an entrepreneur and you try and talk to your wife about it, they don't get it. Right. So, and if they do, it's always awkward. Other owners talking to owners, I think is huge. And if you have an accountability coach or somebody that can work with you, that's huge as well. And that's obviously what we do. So I believe in it quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I can't preach it enough. And to be honest with you, like all the growth, every time I've had growth in the business, I've put it down to having someone that I'm accountable to and keeping me track on targets. Because the other thing is as well is if you're working with the right people, they'll help you diffuse all the other stuff that pops into your head as an entrepreneur, which happens like every 5 minutes.
Every day.
Oh, let's do this. Oh, let's start a podcast. Oh, let's start a vlog. Let's do this. And it's like, no, shut up. Just exactly. Yeah. Like I think having somebody that can keep you on track there. And again, I'm an advocate for having, a coaching program like Breakthrough Academy. I have an accountability coach who I pay him to keep me accountable every month, which might sound ridiculous to a lot of you guys, but that's what I do. I just know I get results from it, and so I'm sure I can promise you it'll work. You just need to find the right person. And I suppose, Danny, as well, like this accountability thing, we talked, I suppose, in jest about, it being a life skill, but like completely it's a life skill. I mean, if you go to the gym and you've got a trainer yelling at you, you're kind of accountable to them, right? Like if you go to the gym and go around and talk to your mates and you just throw a weight around every now and then, like it's a totally different thing.
The best gains I ever got in working out was when I had a coach. I actually don't anymore. And since COVID, I have not been to the gym. So it's really bad. But like, you know what? I think about it and I look back and I'm like, 6 a.m. I got to be up out of bed. I got to meet him at 7. He's waiting for me. Like, so anyway, so that's the first level of accountability. It's tough to hold other people accountable when you're not accountable to someone yourself. Right. So
that's a really good point.
And the next stage is what I think we're going to talk a lot about today, which is holding your team accountable. Most of us, if we look at the workforce coming in right now, it's younger people. And at some level, and it's interesting too, because back in the day, I used to sit down and really look at this with all of our staff. At one point we had, we're 400 painters, 150 franchises. Like we had quite a conglomeration under us when we were running this larger painting franchise. And I noticed patterns in people. And I noticed that people pretty much were more motivated by anything else than money, up to the point where they could pay their bills. And if they were savers, could save a bit of money. And after that, it was about other stuff. Like they were like, I'm actually looking for like someone to help me grow in my career. I'm actually looking for like to be a part of something and help grow something and know that I made an impact. Especially young people, like they often, people complain about millennials because they say, they all want just ownership in day one and they all want to, but they don't understand what they're actually saying. What these millennials are saying is, I want to be a part of the process. Mm-hmm. I want to have fun on the journey with you and I want to get paid for it, obviously, but I want to be able to earn that. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are listening who are employees, here's the best thing you could ever say to your boss if you want to raise. Don't go up to them and say, I want to raise. Go up to them and say, how can I add value to the company to allow you to make more money and in turn me? Mm-hmm. Let's work on that together. And when you can understand that concept of like, that's why I'm holding my people accountable. I'm not holding them accountable to show up on time for work. I'm not holding them accountable for anything like minor. I'm holding them accountable so that as a group, as a team, we can drive towards one thing as a goal and work as like a highly developed sports team and execute as such. So
it's an amazing thing, and I've learnt this through you and Al Levy, who I've recently introduced you to. You know, the difference between, you know, when we had a lot of those conversations, although I think it's becoming less relevant in this environment because I think now more than ever there's more talent that's ever been available. But I know one of the big arguments that we've had and one of the big discussion topics over the years is there's no talent around. There's everyone. It's so hard to compete because a competitor comes along and offers someone an extra $5 an hour, and they jump ship, and you spend all this time training them and skilling them up. And you know, between yourself and Al, you know, you sort of taught me over the years that the difference between being able to diffuse that situation is in offering a career, not a job. And like a career is like a clear path to, you know, succession where they could potentially, you know, end up. And then of course, tying in their goals into that, you know, like, what do you want? Great. If you want this, then this is how you can achieve that through working here. Like, that's a big difference. Like, a competitor won't offer that. So an extra $5 an hour becomes irrelevant.
When you're in the contracting space, it's a dirty job. And a lot of people just, you know, don't think it's a great job. But when you can offer career opportunities and develop people, there's so much money in contracting. You can do all kinds of cool things with your team. And for me anyways, like right from day one, right from being 18 years old, I've been in contracting. And now I'm, you know, managing over almost $1 billion of revenue with all of our members. But it was because I was nurtured. I was built into. People coached me for years, and it gave me a lot of the things I know today. And it had somebody just said, shut up and paint, I'd last a summer, and that'd have been it.
Yeah. Totally. Let's talk about the different things that we should be held accountable to, because obviously we've touched on a few different things here, but there's obviously, like, we're both looking at some notes here, and I know there's certainly things in there which, as a business owner, I'm fanatical about and becoming more and more fanatical about by the minute. But let's jump into some of those.
Yeah, let's do a screen share on this too, because this will help as we talk. This is a typical organizational structure that we would build with the client. So what an organizational structure is it's basically thinking through what everyone's role is, what everyone's deliverables are, so like the numbers they need to deliver on, and kind of who reports to who. It's kind of what this breaks down. So if you think about it, when you're bringing people onto the team, a lot of people are a little fearful to bring on employees because, like, man, that's going to cost us, especially if it's not like a crew guy, if it's somebody that's like in the office. But if you can establish clear deliverables for every single role, that's clear numbers that someone needs to deliver on to be worth their ROI, worth an ROI, now you can turn them into a real like driver in the organization, right? So in this example, it's saying, you know what, the company's trying to hit 4.5 million, make a 40% gross profit off of the jobs that they produce, and have a 60% net promoter, which is a quality metric, which basically it's basically saying 60% of the people that you do work for, we're going to go above and beyond to tell other people about you. And actually, if you ever want to look into net promoter quality scoring, Google it. It's a really interesting way to gauge quality in a business. And the reason that I think these three combo of these three metrics are so important is because it's touching on quality, volume, and profit. And by focusing on those three, you can disseminate those goals down to the team where they can have a bit of a dynamic look at how they achieve things, right? If somebody's only focused on how much they can produce, they're probably going to do it with not profitably and low quality. If it's all about quality, they're probably going to take, you know, sweet time and cost you all kinds of money, and, you know, it'll just run way over budget, right? But by having all three, you're kind of holding people to a more dynamic way of making decisions and a way of trying to achieve a year-end goal with you versus just in their own little pocket of what they think is important. So from there, you start to disseminate your goals down to your team. So some people have bigger teams than others, but this is an example of, you know, a company that would have middle management. So they've got a sales manager, an office admin, a project manager, and you're starting to look at, okay, so what should everybody do? And one of the first things I always do when I'm giving people numerical goals to hold them accountable to is I give them a little bit of a bigger goal than what my company goal is, because everybody misses goals every once in a while. It's just a part of being human. And so I give, you know, the sales guy a $4.8 million goal, but my company goal is 4.5. But then I also think of like, what things does that salesperson have direct control over that they can have a direct impact on? Well, they can have a control over their closing ratio, their success ratio. They can have a control over if they're the one estimating the job, the gross profit margin made on the job, a little bit of control. Our project manager can have a lot of control over the quality with the customer. The office admin can have control over the AR and how much accounts receivable are due at any given time, or how quickly phone calls are returned. So you want to think about holding people accountable to things they have direct control over in their role, and by executing on that thing, they can create a direct ROI to the company whenever possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been talking so much about organizational structure lately, and I know we've just gone through this big hiring thing at the moment, and it's been the only way that I've ever been able to hire and onboard teams successfully is through organizational structure.
Yeah, because otherwise you're shooting in the dark. You're just like, I'm really busy in this one area, and let's hire another person and see, like, get them to take it over. And people become dead weight pretty quickly. And you just got a bunch of people doing a bunch of random tasks. This will line everybody up in a direction.
Yeah.
And now this is even more important because when you build middle management, they now have a team that can help them achieve their bigger goal.
Right. And I think as well, like for a lot of the guys out there that are watching this or listening, like you may be across all of those different department middle management levels in the beginning. And the chances are if you're starting out, you are, but it doesn't mean they don't exist. They're there and you're across them, whether you like it or not. And I can always say to the guys when we're talking org chart, like you can't just remove that. You can't just say, no, we don't want finance, because it's in every business. It's there. The reality is you're just flying the flag for that department. So until you clearly identify, what that role looks like, and then what the responsibilities are within that role, and the deliverables that tie to that specific role and department and areas within that department, then you're never going to be able to outsource that to somebody until you have clearly mapped out what Danny's sort of done here in this department org structure.
And you can do fun things with this, right? You can set up bonus structures on these numbers that really get people incentivized. So if I'm telling a project manager, hey, I want you to produce, $1 million this year at a 40% profit margin, I'm going to basically pay you to do that. So I'm going to pay you your base salary to do that. But what am I saying to them? I'm basically saying to them, I want you to bring the company $400,000 in gross profit. But then I say, Mr. Project Manager, I kind of open to giving you as much money as you want this year. And here's how we're going to do it. Everything that you produce and profit over that 400 grand, I'll give you 10% of. And so if he can figure out how to produce more, or produce $1 million, but more profitably, or a combination of the two, they have unlimited earning potential. And now you can turn people from being just an employee that cares about just clocking in, clocking out, to more of an ownership type mentality where they own that side of the business and they're trying to dynamically achieve those numbers. And by doing that, you're making 90% more on top of what they exceed on. So everybody wins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a baseline kind of like drop of, we talked a lot about numbers in the last 2 episodes and Excel sheets and all this stuff. This is where it all goes, right? So why do you do all that work? Half because as an owner, you need to know this stuff, but half because you need to be able to disseminate these goals clearly down to your team and have confidence in your ability to help them hit their year end.
It's a different conversation, but what I love about this as well is, when you are bringing people into positions and you show them this, and you can show them the succession path. You can say, well, this is the position I'm hiring you for right now, but as you can see, this is where I would love you to end up in 12 months' time. I'd love you to be the project manager, or I'd love you to be the crew leader, or whatever, So it gives them a sort of a clear path as to where they can head and then what they could be making and how much, it just really does map out that, the career for them as opposed to just a typical job.
You want to attract high performers, you got to be organized. They're going to interview you just as much as you're going to interview them. The performers will anyways.
Exactly right. Yeah. Love it.
The C performers are going to apply to you every 6 months because they can't seem to hold a job. But
yeah,
you need to at some level have some structure for them. So that's that piece. And then what you do with that, and I'm just going to, you've never seen our library before. I thought I might show you guys quickly. Cool. So we're talking key metrics. So what we'll do is we'll bake these key metrics into the people's employment agreements, right? So if we've got a project manager that we've decided that we have set goals for them to go after, we'll then basically right in here start to dictate out, okay, here's your deliverables. So you need to produce a certain amount of revenue at a certain margin. You need to maintain a certain quality rating. You need to provide training for our team. And every number has a description of exactly how to achieve that. So what do you do day to day, the how-tos of achieving this number? And what this starts to do is you do this right when you hire somebody, or you have to do in a realignment meeting with your previous staff that maybe don't have this set of employment agreement. It gives them the rails to run on. It helps them know and understand what they do, what the next person does, what they're fully in charge of. And so that you don't hear things like, well, I didn't know that was my job. This is where it kind of the rubber starts to hit the road, because you did all this work to figure out your numbers. You try and go to your team and say, hey, here's this great idea. I want to hold you all accountable to numbers. But if you don't have a formal way to process that with each person and sit down and agree on exactly how they'll achieve it, it usually within 3 months is vaporized and nobody remembers anything. There's back to production as normal.
And my experience is as well that they appreciate this because it gives them direction and it brings clarity to what they're supposed to do. Because there's nothing, and I've been guilty of this, and I've said it a million times on the show. We've all been in that position before, where you go and hire someone to be your savior, and you don't equip them the right way, and you don't onboard them the right way, and all of a sudden they don't deliver on they can't get into your head to figure out what it is you actually want them to do. So you consider them a failure, you fire them, and then you blame them for it. In reality, it's entirely your fault. You screwed up the onboarding, you screwed up the recruitment, you screwed up everything, and they cop the blame for it. So I think having that process down is just so important if you want to build a team that's driven, motivated, and is efficient.
Totally. So the next step is you actually got to hold them accountable. So we do something called GS&R. It stands for goal setting and review. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a religious practice that you basically do every single week. So maybe every 2 weeks if that makes sense for your schedule, but I do it with my team internally. So I have 4 direct reports. Each person basically reports to certain people in the company that have oversee their goals and their ability to achieve. And every week we go over a file where they type in on a Friday before I meet them on a Monday, how last week went, what went well, what didn't go well, how their metrics are doing, how they're feeling, stuff like that. And then I review that Monday morning, and I come into a half-hour meeting with each one of my direct reports and go over it. So sometimes it's a conversation on how they're feeling. Sometimes they're just having a rough week, or they're a little down or upset about something, and it's a chance for me to re-engage them in their commitment properly. Sometimes we need to problem solve metrics. Sometimes the numbers are down by a little bit, and we need to think through problem solving wise what next week should look like. But the biggest thing is it's me making sure as an owner, as a manager of the people I am in charge of, that I can help direct their attention and energy for the next week in the right direction, and slowly coach them both to grow as an individual, but also as to achieve their actual year-end goal. So it's not some pipe dream of I'll give you a big bonus if you make $400,000 for the company this year. It's every week. Let's move towards making that plus, so that you can hit your goal of whatever it is, buying your house or whatever it is. And so I've done that since I was 18 years old, and it works like gold.
What are some of those metrics that you like to put into the GS&R meeting?
So salespeople, we track sales ratio, so closing ratio.
Do you do this, Danny, with every team, every member of the team, or do you do this with your managers and then the managers do it with their subordinates?
Correct, actually, yes. So I do it with my managers. My managers will do it with their downline. So everyone's in charge of their direct teams. Most of the time, like a project manager does it in the field with their crews. It's done a little bit more casually because you don't want them all sitting on an Excel file, all your contractors, right? All your tradies. So yeah, I'll explain this maybe a little bit as we go down the line. So the owner would sit down with whoever's their project manager, sales manager, administrative manager. Those would be their 3 direct reports. And with their, let's say, project manager, they're usually measuring things like quality on job sites. They're measuring things like gross profit margins made on jobs. They're measuring things like jobs. We call it a Q job quality job on budget. So, timeliness of when the job was originally budgeted to be completed versus when it was actually completed. So you're looking at schedules and things like that. And you're just helping them maintain we have this much labor hours in the field this week. We have this much being produced and invoiced, and we have this much profit being made off of that production. And we have this much quality with the customer based on the surveys we're doing. And those are that's their dashboard. They're living off of that, and we're seeing goal versus actual. With the sales team, it's all the sales metrics, right? It's this much revenue is booked. This is our average job size. This is how many quotes we did. This is how many leads we generated. And this is our lead to estimate conversion ratio. And through all of that, basically they're held accountable to their pipeline. So with my sales team, actually, so we track everything like a hawk, and we can start to see, when our closing ratios are going up, when they're going down, by how much, why, what to do about it. And I bonus them on not just booking a certain amount of, work in the year. I bonus them on the quality that they do it in. So for salespeople, it's usually closing ratio. I don't want you to burn through a bunch of estimates and have a 20% closing ratio. I want you to have a 60% closing ratio, because then I have to generate less leads and you can be more. So I focus on the number, but also the efficiency factor to hit that number along the way. It's similar. So let's say with your crews, the simplest way I found to do it is I just grab a piece of paper and I have a Monday to Friday schedule before lunch and after lunch. And I have them write down all the things they want to do before lunch, all the things they want to do after lunch. And I have them build out a 5-day kind of schedule. And basically now we can just check off with a check mark that they did it before lunch or after lunch, and that they're maintaining the process of getting the job done in a timely manner. And I just keep it that simple with them.
I guess there's always things that'll pop up which will help make you deviate from the plan. But as long as you've got something to go back to, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, the key is that there's accountability on some goals that mean something that are reflected on weekly, and there's rigor to that process. And over time, if there's bonuses in it for them, they'll be able to achieve what they want to achieve. I often sit down with my people and I say, what's your goals by the end of the year? You want to buy a house? You want to buy a car? You want to go on a vacation? Cool. How can we get that bonus to achieve that result? And now we're aligned. Let's go. Yeah, we've definitely covered org structure basics. We've definitely covered goal setting review. Reporting structures, we talked a little bit about who dictates to who, understanding how to effectively create a reporting structure with a supportive goal accountability. So we definitely just did that. Next, probably best thing is the organizational communication. If you want to go into that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big thing. Understanding, I suppose, the way people communicate within well, for example, whenever we try and communicate things through things like email. So now we have like intricate project management, and it's like super, super comprehensive, and it works really well. And then we've also got, like a chat program, which, to be honest, you've heard of Slack and things like that. We've just recently migrated from Slack across to Google Chat because it's all part of G Suite. Essentially, it's the same thing. But even that, I still say to guys, I don't want to take this conversation into project management, because I know that in those chat things, they can get lost.
Yeah, there's a few good, so there's CRM or project management software, which I'm sure your group knows quite a bit about at this point. Probably talk a lot about it. So having something like that, so T-sheets to help with organization of time and tracking of that. Then there's what you just brought up, so like team communication. So have you ever heard of Company Cam?
Yeah,
they're out in the United States. They do an incredible job of just kind of like Slack, but for contractors, where it's all picture based and people can actually see what's going on as the job's being progressed. But also be really good. Those are the main ones. I find in general, we actually use Asana. So if you're doing, and this is for companies that are getting a little more complex, but if you're doing quite large like projects over time and you need to span out those projects and basically understand all the minute steps along the way, that's a really effective thing.
Yeah, we've just started. We used to use Asana. We've actually recently moved across to ClickUp. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you use, as long as you use something. It's kind of more like internal office administration style project management. Would you agree, as opposed to like out on site sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's keeping track of all the little pieces along the way and making sure that you actually have a place to put them. Because if you don't put them somewhere, then you might not do them, and then they get completely forgotten, and then you go back and have to fix it later, right? So. And to be honest, too, like we're getting quite a bit into Asana right now. No large project of any, and no big idea can ever truly be created until it's project managed to existence. So there's project managing your actual jobs, but then there's like the business itself. Like if you want to take the business to the next level, you need to have, right now we're working on quite a few marketing initiatives, and they take 3 or 4 months to build out. And if you want to do them properly, like you need to have milestones, you need to have tasks oriented towards getting towards those. And the team is all going to be on a different level. And if everyone's sitting in Excel, it's hard to really know if anyone's actually on track.
It's been a massive shift, I suppose, having like everyone sort of be able to communicate and stay accountable to, the different deliverables and tasks which lie within it could be a given project. So say, for example, you're running or very often, I suppose, with a lot of our clients, it's about understanding the administration aspects that are all involved in running a project. So while the job management software is great for running the job, but then, what has to happen in the lead up to that? And, what sort of tasks need to be performed? We have to get, our engineering drawings, you have to get architecturals, we need to get, council approval, design application, like all this kind of stuff, like things that don't necessarily live in job management, like that stuff needs to live in like what we call project management. And again, it's just about keeping people accountable to the step-by-step process. So for us, especially, making sure that at the end, the result's the same, like it's delivered with consistency, the way we want it delivered, as opposed to the way that they may be used to doing it if they were working elsewhere, or the way they might think about doing something. No, we want it done like this, ding, 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 ding. And they're accountable to it because they have to check it off every time they do it. And they can't go to the next stage until they check it off, kind of thing.
Donald's the process. It was funny. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, contracting is one of the few things where every job, it has to be built. Like you have to kind of like do it from scratch every time. Like if you think about a lot of industries, it's kind of like you just have to do the same, make the same burger every time, make the same. Very few companies have to show up on a job site, problem solve how to execute on that job site, and actually do it to completion within the budget given. Like there's a lot of variables all the time in contracting.
Especially if you're in the renovation space. Like all the guys that do the renovate, I mean, new builds, I'm sure there's variables, but like nothing like, when you're renovating a home and like, oh, hang on, all of a sudden we open this wall and we realized it was timber frame and not brick.
Or the whole thing is just rotting. We need to
There's termites everywhere. I get they're all things, I suppose, that need to be taken into consideration. But again, like those kind of things, ideally are a checklist, right? It's something when you go out on site, that's the first thing you look for. Okay, well, let's figure out what the specifics are for this project, and you're following a deliverable checklist so you don't miss anything. And you know what? And it's super important to communicate the fact that these checklists and project management is an ongoing work in progress. It is never, ever a destination in my experience. Like there's always something to be improved. Yesterday, we lost a huge client because we fucked something up like we did. And that was something that was missed in the process, in the project management. So I had to go back and amend the template, and like, I've got to throw my hand up for that. Like he missed it because I didn't have the process down. There was a part of it that got missed, and that's the way it is. So, and that will happen, guys in business, you'll have those situations. It's not always rainbows and unicorns, but then like being able to proactively like learn from that lesson and say, okay, well, now we're never going to do that again. I mean, that doesn't help the client that we screwed up for, but, looking forward, that's how you improve your business, and, you should be constantly on the edge of improving these processes and being accountable to it. Like I admit it, we screwed it up, I'm not going to try and shy away from it. It's something that happened and, we're going to move on.
Yeah, I'll show you what we're talking about, like a visual representation of it. We build these a lot for our guys. So we have these forms called competency models, and we basically have a place to check off whether it's been completed, partially completed, or not completed at all. And so within it, you can see like, this is for quality control, for inspections, this is for painting, job site cleanup, customer walkthroughs, like everything has a bullet point to it. And so not only is this good for them to know and check off exactly how they're doing, you can use this as feedback. So you can come back every 6 months after you've trained them and say, I'm going to assess your job site or your ability to do, a job close, which is that's what this one is, and give you marks on whether you completed it successfully, partially, or not completed at all. And then what we do with these is we connect these to standard operating procedures. So every bullet point has a paragraph of how to do it. And for any X you get, you got to go reference that, kind of like a code book for your job.
So do you encourage guys to use technology for this, or do you just...
Yeah, way we do is, I think it's in Australia, right?
Yeah, SAP.
Yeah. So they have a very good framework for that. We're actually we have actually initiated it now. We're going to work on a piece of technology that's going to take what I just showed you and turn it into digital format for our customers and preload them with all these templates so that they can customize them. But yeah, it's becoming a big part of the industry, and we're trying to standardize the whole thing as we go.
Yeah. Because I know with a lot of our guys, like they'll do similar sort of. I mean, actually, and to be fair, a lot of some of these job management, project management tools the guys are using are just so great. Like your Ascoras, Aeroflow, Simpros, Tradeify, ServiceMates, and all the ones that you guys use over there. A lot of them have the ability to create those accountability checklists within them. And it's one of those things with technology, right? Like people use 5% of them because they don't understand how to use the rest of it. So, like understanding the capabilities of some of these tools is pretty important.
We've come a long way in those last couple episodes, but if you look what we've been talking about, it's like big picture numbers degraded down to sales and marketing plans, brought to an organizational structure that tells us the deliverables of each person, that gets baked into a job description, that gets reinforced through GSNR and gets trained and basically developed through checklists and project management to make sure everything gets done and repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah. And you know what, it's kind of as well sort of made me rethink a couple of things, because I know like, I've always been an advocate of like everything basically starts with your organizational structure. And I think like, to be fair, it kind of does. But now thinking about it as well, you kind of also need to have like what we've been talking about is in the budget running alongside it and the forecasting, because they kind of feed each other. And so as important as it is to have that org structure and say, well, this is where, what I want the structure to look like in 6 months or whatever, like you kind of need to have the financial budgeting, forecasting, accountability set up for that to actually for it to work, right? I'm kind of like thinking now, maybe I need to shift some of the things that I'm doing, that I do, and some of the things that we talk about a lot, because that's kind of like they're very much hand in hand.
Yep. A lot of people, this is actually what I just showed you is a big aha moment for a lot of people. They come in, they're like, we have an org structure, we have a budget, we have job descriptions, but they haven't linked them all to be one thing. They're kind of all living in their own world. And when you can link it all to be one thing, it becomes much more mechanized and predictable. And the changes in your budget change the goals, which change the org structure, which change how many people you hire, which changes your salaries, which changes the bonus structure. Like it can all be linked. And this is what we work with our members for about 3 years on, right? We spend 3 years, not just this, but like this is the core engine of the whole thing, getting this right. And in doing so, moving the owner out of being the pillar of everything and letting the system do that, right? And if you look at any really good franchise system, McDonald's is a really good example, right? That's what's going on. That's the magic behind the whole thing. And that's where I grew up, right? I grew up in a franchise organization. I saw it for what it was, and I was like, there's got to be a way to take that and bring it to the public. And that's what we've been spending years doing.
Yeah, and you guys just do an amazing job of it. Such an awesome program. I love that. I love that mindset as well about, and again, it's something that I've learned from, you and the likes of Al, Levy, being able to, when you are across all those departments in the beginning, if you ever want to remove yourself from something, you need to map it out so that you can clearly bring someone into a position with deliverables, expectations, and then you can step away from it, and you can go focus on what's important. I mean, I look at my org chart, and it's quite funny. Where I want to be on my org chart is so far down the ladder. I would say so far down the ladder, but it's under management. Like, I don't want to be in management. I want to be down here, like creating content, which comes under sales and marketing, which comes under content manager. Like that's where I want to spend my time, because I know it's the most valuable for the business, And so I need to get myself out of these other departments, which is what we're proactively doing now. But we're only achieving that through org chart, through the org structure.
I agree, man. So yeah, what we do every January is we finalize our budget, we finalize our org chart, we realize who we got to recruit. We spend the next year go on that recruiting path. We add those salaries in, we give those people their deliverables. They help grow the company, and we just rinse, wash, and repeat it every year. And growth is becoming pretty predictable at this point.
It's one of the things too, isn't it, Danny? Like, a lot of the guys, and you would certainly experience this probably far more than I have, but I know a lot of our, there's all this big emphasis for, and you see all these cliche things on the, for around trade coaching and stuff. Oh, get off the tools, But for the reality is, for a lot of the guys, they want to be on the guy on the tools. They want to remove themselves from the other stuff. And it's kind of like what I was just saying there. Like, I don't necessarily want to be in the management positions. I want to be down the bottom doing the work and creating the content, in the trenches there, where I'd rather have other people do that sort of stuff, because I know I'm more valuable in that position. But understanding that, like, for a lot of guys, they want to be the guy on site. They want to be the guys running the jobs. They don't want to be the guy who has to be in charge of, doing the invoicing and doing the, accounting and, doing all that kind of stuff. But until you've got a clear understanding of that organizational structure and where you fit into it or where you want to end up, like, you have no way of removing yourself. My buddy Darren, actually, I don't know if you've listened to the recent podcasts with him, Darren, the kitchen maker, but he's essentially been traveling for a couple of years, and he's got quite a successful cabinetry joinery business on the northern beaches of Sydney. He does that. Like, he has essentially replaced himself in all of the management positions. Of course, he's the owner, and he still reviews all the numbers as part of his role, which you'll never stop doing. But then when he comes back to the business, which he had to with the whole coronavirus thing, he came back from Switzerland, and he went straight into building kitchens and going out on site. And like, that's what he wants to do. Like, he knows that when he's there, he can, like, it keeps him back in touch with process and how he can improve things, and he can make changes at, like, those other lower level things, which then improve the overall performance of the whole organization. And I think, like, so many guys get caught up with the whole incorrect mindset of, well, in order for me to grow the business, I have to be the guy up there, sitting at the top that's making all the big decisions, which, to be fair, they don't know any of that stuff. They never learnt it. Like, they learn how to swing hammers and deliver on jobs, which is sometimes where they should stay.
Can I show you something, actually? Exactly what you're talking about. I had to write a keynote session for an organization in like a day. And I was on a flight, and I was thinking about the relationship with my business partners, like me, James, who I don't think you know yet, and then Igor, who I know you've met a few times. But this is the three of us. And what I've noticed is, like, we're a very powerful team because of the three of us being in these three different worlds. You've got the dreamer, and this is a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs are the self-starter. They're kind of crazy. They're eternal optimists. They have ideas coming out of their ears. They trust their gut. They're excellent problem solvers, and they kind of are always trying to fix the system, but often leads to unnecessary complexity. They're just running around like crazy men.
Who would that be in your organization?
That's me. That's me.
I know.
Totally. So, there's that person. And then there's the implementer who's detail-oriented, practical, realist, OCD, seeks perfection, excellent identifying the good ideas out of the dreamer. Uses data to make decisions, builds things once, lasts the test of time, and makes complex ideas simple. And then there's the person you haven't met who's on the back end, the person, coaching our coaches and leading our team, the specialist. He's the master in their craft. They execute best when given direction and a plan. They use experience to make decisions. They follow the system, and they're loyal to a fault. Entrepreneurs usually have a combination of these, but I find a lot of guys are in this dreamer phase. Some of them have a dreamer implementer combo. What you just described is a lot of people having, the specialist inside of them. They don't want to lead the craft, right? So this is totally natural. I'm going to show you something. This is was given to me a long time ago, but this is a chart. This is the best way to show it. This is what you go from startup to visionary phase of business. So from 100, one employee to 100 to 500 employees. This is what happens in business. This is everything you're talking about in your podcast that people are kind of realizing or about to realize as they grow. The dreamer is a big part of the startup phase and the ramp up phase. They're 40% of all the stuff that gets done. And the specialist, obviously, in the beginning needs to be a big part too, because you got to do the jobs, right? The implementer is not really needed a ton. A little bit of help here and there, but nothing crazy. As you get to 20 employees and you move through this phase of 20 to 50 employees, this implementer suddenly becomes the most important part of the entire organization. And without this person in place or without help or support in that area, this is where companies fall down and hit a glass ceiling. And this is why you see a lot of people hit $1 million, $2 million in revenue and kind of stop because they don't have this piece understood.
Well, we did a podcast on that, didn't we?
I think we did. So this was huge for me because I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, I'm a dreamer, like through and through. I'm actually probably anything but an implementer. So I'm not that guy. And I struggled a little bit as we grew Breakthrough Academy because it's gotten quite large now. And I'm not necessarily the most needed person right now. So I might as well go do a podcast with you, right? Go do other things. But for me, I've realized that being in business, it's just not just one way of figuring it out and then you got it figured out. You're always evolving and things are always moving. And as an owner, you have to be dynamic and you have to be humble too. I have to know when to get out of my own way of my own business to help it grow and evolve and put the right people in the positions they need to be to expand and grow. And I can't run everything. In fact, it'll hurt me if I do try to do that long term.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this has been awesome. So once again, another super, super valuable series. Guys, this is Danny from Breakthrough Academy over in British Columbia, Canada. And this was the third and final episode in the Measuring What You Manage, the Only Way to Run a Profitable Trades Business at Scale series. Now, you guys, I encourage you to go check out the other podcasts I've done with Danny as well. Back in November 2016, we did the top three mistakes growing trade businesses make. But back in May of 2019, we did a series called Scaling Your Business from 500K to 5 million, which is what I was talking about then, Danny. I think we touched on that sort of dead zone where people were and then, of course, if you haven't got a chance to listen to the two episodes that came before this one, the first one on budgeting, the second one on forecasting, make sure you go check that out, especially one on forecasting. Go and watch that if you can. Head across to the Facebook page, watch the video there, because Danny walks through one of his resources, which has been a massive game changer for a load of our community. And it's also available to you guys for free. So you can head across to the show notes there and you can get access to that. Danny, where can people get hold of you?
So probably just our website is probably the easiest. Breakthrough Academy is, the website is btacademy.com. So B's in Bravo, T's in Tango, academy.com. Or you can email me directly. My email is danny@btacademy.com and always happy to have a chat. And
on your resource page as well, Danny, at the siteshed.com, there's a booking link to your calendar. So if you guys want to go and schedule a time to have a chat with Danny, it's probably the best way to do it. So again, head across to the SiteShed. Just go to the show notes for this episode. You'll be able to get straight to that link. All right, Danny, it's been great. Thank you once again for your time and your knowledge. We look forward to the next episode for sure.
Cool, dude. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, folks. That's a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.